In the early 2000s, a sound unlike any other dominated the airwaves. It was a voice that could be a gentle, melodic whisper one moment and a raw, cathartic scream the next. In stadiums across the world, tens of thousands of people would sing along, their own frustrations and fears reflected in the lyrics. For millions, this wasn't just the voice of a rock star, it was the voice of a feeling they could never put into words. This is the story of Chester Bennington, the man who channeled a lifetime of pain into anthems that defined and healed a generation. To understand the voice, we must first understand the scars that shaped it. Chester's childhood was not a happy one. It was a landscape of instability, loneliness, and stolen innocence. He endured deep, traumatic wounds that would leave him with a boiling pot of anger, confusion, and a profound sense of isolation. This was not a demon he could fight, but a shadow that followed him, shaping his perception of the world and himself. For years, this immense pain had no language, no outlet. It was a silent scream trapped inside a young man who felt utterly alone. Art, first through drawing and then through music, became his only sanctuary. He found that sanctuary in the sounds of bands like Depeche Mode and Stone Temple Pilots. In their music, he heard his own feelings reflected back at him. It was a revelation. Music wasn't just noise, it was a language that could articulate the complex, painful emotions he was unable to express. He began writing poetry and lyrics, filling notebooks with the dark thoughts that haunted him. He started his first band, Grey Days, and for the first time, he had a microphone to channel his silent scream into a physical, audible force. It was raw and unrefined, but it was the beginning of him forging his pain into an instrument. He began his journey by singing in various local bands in Arizona, searching for a way to translate his internal chaos into sound. But it wasn't until he received a demo tape from a band in California called Zero that he found the perfect canvas for his pain. The band was experimenting with a revolutionary new sound, a hybrid of hard rock, melodic hooks, electronic soundscapes, and hip-hop verses. It was a sound that was as conflicted and diverse as the feelings Chester was trying to express. He poured his own experiences into the lyrics, and in 2000, that band, now renamed Linkin Park, released their debut album, Hybrid Theory. The creation of Hybrid Theory was a process of decoding this new musical language. The band's creative engine was the dynamic between Chester and co-founder Mike Shinoda. Shinoda, the methodical rapper and producer, would often build the structured, hip-hop-influenced framework of a song. Chester would then tap into his raw emotion, layering it with soaring, vulnerable melodies and explosive, cathartic screams. It was a perfect fusion. Shinoda's structure gave Chester's chaos a form, and Chester's chaos gave Shinoda's structure a soul. This collaborative code was the key to turning abstract feelings of pain into perfectly crafted, 3-minute anthems. The album was a cultural atom bomb, and at its core was the code of Chester's voice. His vocal style was a direct translation of his internal struggle. The melodic, almost boyish singing in the verses was the sound of his vulnerability, the quiet sadness and introspection. But the choruses, where his voice would erupt into that now iconic raw-throated scream, was the explosive, uncensored release of years of pent-up rage and pain. It was a perfect sonic metaphor for the cycle of depression and anxiety. This duality wasn't a gimmick, it was his lived experience forged into a unique artistic language. He had finally found a way to make his silent scream audible, and in doing so, he had begun the process of turning his personal scars into public anthems. The impact was immediate and profound. Songs like Crawling, with its brutally honest lyrics about a lack of control over one's own skin, and In the End, a lament on disillusionment, were more than just hit singles. They became the anthems for a generation of young people navigating the anxieties of a new millennium. For millions of teenagers and young adults who felt unheard, misunderstood, or overwhelmed by emotions they couldn't name, Chester's voice was a revelation. It was a confirmation that they were not alone. His lyrics were not abstract poetry. They were raw, unfiltered diary entries that listeners felt they could have written themselves. He wasn't singing at them from a stage. He was screaming with them from the trenches of their own minds. This connection created a commercial shockwave that the music industry couldn't ignore. At a time when pop music and post-grunge were the dominant forces, Linkin Park's hybrid theory was something entirely new and aggressive. It went on to become one of the best-selling debut albums of all time, proving that there was a massive, underserved global audience that was hungry for this kind of raw, emotional honesty. They weren't just a successful rock band, they were a cultural phenomenon that had given a voice to the voiceless, and the world was listening. This connection was the true power of his art. Through his willingness to be vulnerable on a global stage, he gave an entire generation the vocabulary and the permission to acknowledge their own inner turmoil. He made it okay to not be okay. The concerts became a form of mass therapy, a space where thousands of people could collectively release their pain, guided by a man who understood it better than anyone. He was a reluctant icon for mental health awareness long before it became a mainstream conversation, a healer who used his own wounds to comfort the wounds of others. Tragically, the same demons that fueled his art were a battle he fought his entire life. On July 20th, 2017, Chester Bennington died by suicide, and the voice that had saved so many could not, in the end, save himself. His death sent a shockwave of grief across the world, a devastating final note in a story of immense talent and immense pain. But the story does not end with his death. His true legacy is not the tragedy of his final act, but the immortal power of the anthems he left behind. That legacy echoes in the countless artists he inspired. His unique ability to blend raw aggression with soaring vulnerability broke down the boundaries of what a rock singer could be. A new generation of vocalists in rock, metal, and even pop music studied his technique, learning how to channel genuine emotion into their performances. He proved that commercial success and raw, unfiltered honesty were not mutually exclusive. His influence is a testament to the fact that the most powerful art often comes from the deepest scars. The Code of Chester Bennington is the ultimate proof of alchemy, that art can transform the darkest, most brutal parts of the human experience into a message of connection, empathy, and hope. Though the voice is now silent, the echo remains, and his anthems continue to remind millions around the world that they are not alone. And that is the architecture of the voice of Chester Bennington. Remember, history is more than a story. It's a code, and there is always another layer to decrypt. Subscribe and continue the investigation with us.